340 volts, down to exactly 5. Inside the little brick on your nightstand. No wire trick, no simple step down. This is high voltage surgery happening in your pocket thousands of times a second. Here's the mismatch. Your wall gives about 120 volts of alternating current. Your phone battery wants a steady 3.7 to 4.2 volts of direct current. Get this conversion wrong and one of two things happens. Nothing charges or you cook the battery and start a fire. So a charger isn't a wire. It's a real power conversion machine. First, where does 340 come from? When we say 120 volts, that's an average measure. The actual sine wave swings higher at its peaks, about 1.41 times higher. So US wall power peaks near 170 volts, and Europe's 230 peaks around 325 to 340. That's your headline number hiding in plain sight. But there's a second problem. This power alternates direction 60 times a second, sloshing back and forth. A battery can't use that. A battery needs current flowing one way, held steady. Picture a river that reverses every heartbeat versus a calm one-way canal. So the charger has one core job and everything else serves it. Take high voltage power that flips direction constantly and turn it into low voltage power that flows one direction, flat and steady. High to low, wobbling to still. That's the whole mission. Now, how do you flip a wave that reverses 60 times a second into something that only ever points forward? Step 1. Stop the wave from reversing. The charger uses 4 tiny one-way gates called diodes, wired in a diamond. A diode only lets current pass in one direction. Arrange 4 of them cleverly and something neat happens. Whenever the wave tries to go negative, the gates reroute it so it comes out positive instead. Both halves of the wobble now point the same way. This is called rectification. But look at the result. It's not smooth. It's a string of humps, pulsing up and down to 0 and back, still touching near that 340-volt peak but full of gaps. A battery would hate that. So we add one more part. A smoothing capacitor. Think of a small water tank that fills at every peak and drips out during the valleys, keeping the tank nearly full. It charges up on each hump and releases during each dip. The humps flatten into a fairly steady high voltage line, holding up near 340 volts. We've killed the reversing. Now the problem is the opposite one. That voltage is still lethally high. Now the clever part. We have steady 340-volt direct current, and we need to shrink it. The trick is to chop it. A switching transistor acts like a hyperfast light switch, flicking that 340 volts fully on, then fully off, tens of thousands of times every second, often over 100,000 times a second. On-off faster than you can imagine. Why chop it instead of just draining it down? 2 reasons. Chopping it fully on and off wastes almost no energy as heat, unlike an old resistor approach that just burned the extra voltage away. And here's the payoff for the chopping. It lets the next part, the transformer, be tiny. Because this design switches the power on and off so fast, it's called a switch-mode power supply. Older, cheaper bricks switched at frequencies you could actually hear. That faint high-pitched buzz from an old phone charger was this chopping leaking into sound. So we've turned steady high-voltage direct current into a machine gun burst of high-voltage pulses. But pulses of 340 volts still can't touch a phone. How do we get them down to single digits? Enter the transformer. It's 2 coils of wire wound around a shared core, and it trades voltage for a change in the number of loops. Feed high-voltage pulses into a coil with many turns, and pull them out of a coil with far fewer turns, and the voltage drops in the same proportion. A ratio near 30 to 1 takes those 340-volt pulses down into the single-digit range. Here's the second gift, and it might be the most important one. The 2 coils never actually touch. Power crosses from one to the other purely through a magnetic field jumping the gap. That gap is a wall. It means the deadly 340-volt side is physically separated from the side you hold. This is why you can grip your phone in the bath-adjacent world of everyday life and not get electrocuted. The lethal voltage never has a direct path to your hand. This separation is called isolation. On the low-voltage side, those small pulses get rectified and smoothed again, the same diode and capacitor trick, into a calm, low-voltage direct current line. We're finally close. But close isn't 5.00. So how does the charger nail exactly 5.00 volts when the wall sags and your phone's demand jumps around? It watches itself and corrects thousands of times a second. A sensor on the output constantly measures the actual voltage. If it drifts high, a signal says slow down. If it sags low, speed up. But there's a catch. The output side and the switching side are separated by that isolation wall. The signal can't just run across a wire. So it jumps the gap as a tiny beam of light through a part called an optocoupler. A little LED on one side, a light sensor on the other, carrying the message across without breaking the barrier. That message tells the fast switch to stay on a hair longer or shorter each cycle, widening or narrowing the pulses. More on time, more voltage. Less on time, less. This constant watch and adjust is a feedback loop, and it's the whole reason we can say exactly 5 and mean it. Without it, you'd get roughly 5s. With it, the output locks at 5.00, ballpark 170 times before you finish this sentence. Trace the whole chain in one breath. While power peaks at 340 volts. 4 diodes flip it one way, a capacitor smooths it flat. A transistor chops that 340 into pulses over 100,000 times a second. A transformer shrinks the pulses about 30 to 1 and walls you off from the lethal side. The low-voltage pulses get rectified and smoothed again, and a light beam feedback loop locks the result at exactly 5 volts. That regulated 5-volt USB output isn't the end. It feeds a second chip inside your phone, which sets the final 3.7 to 4.2 volts flowing into the battery. So the little brick was never just a plug. It's a full switch-mode power supply, running that entire 340 to 5 gauntlet thousands of times every second, silently all night long. So here's what this actually means for you. That warm little brick you plug in without thinking is doing high-voltage work every single night, rectifying, chopping, stepping down, and self-correcting over and over while you sleep. 2 takeaways you can use. That warmth is the tiny bit of energy lost in all that chopping and switching. It's normal, not a fault. And a cheap, badly made charger cuts corners on exactly the part that keeps you safe. The isolation wall between 340 volts and your hand. That's the one place quality genuinely matters. So tonight, when you plug in, you're holding a machine that turns 340 volts into precisely 5. A high voltage to low voltage converter running quietly in your palm. But here's the next question. How does your fast charger jump from 5 volts to 9 or even 20 on demand? That negotiation has a name. USB-C power delivery, and it's the next box we'll open.